And we're back on FalkTalk. Once again, I'm Gary, and we're sponsored by the Lindsay McDonald Group at Security National Mortgage Company. Today we have a real special guest, and we appreciate him being on. We have Jeremy Horn, past UFC fighter. I believe you retired from the UFC.
No, I'm not officially retired yet. That never really goes away. But I haven't fought in a little while, so but it's still not off the list. It's just a little further down the list.
Nice. I hate to put you on the spot then, because we didn't really prep at all for our conversation.
Right.
But you and I have really only shortly met. We've crossed each other's paths several times at fights,
right.
And you've cornered just about every fight of the local respected fighters that I know.
Sure.
And I know that you came from a Jiu-Jitsu past.
Mm-hmm.
But would you mind telling me a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I started training in martial arts when I was 12. As the UFC started getting more popular, me and the friends that I was training with kind of started, flowing towards that a little bit more, just kind of gravitating towards that because it seemed like something we wanted to do. Then I got offered my first fight when I was 19 and just kind of took off.
Was that local?
No, it actually wasn't. I was living in Omaha, Nebraska at the time. That's where I was born and raised. And it was a local guy that had connections somehow, but the fight was actually in Atlanta.
Huh. So like a paying show, though?
No, not really. They paid for our flight, but we actually fought for free. So.
But that was the first on your fight card,
right?
Like for
that was my very first fight. Yeah.
Okay. I know that there's several fighters here locally that are still, being brought up by you and by Elite Performance.
Sure.
But how many have actually reached the UFC that you've been working with?
Well, I've had two that have come from my gym that have been in the UFC, and I've had probably half a dozen others that have come and trained with me. And then gotten into the UFC, and I've got probably half a dozen others that have made it onto the Ultimate Fighter the Show.
Right.
So
like DeMarcus.
Yeah, DeMarcus Johnson, Sean O'Connell's in the UFC now. Nick Rossborough, Jay Kuhn, and a couple others have trained with me and then gotten a chance to get on the show. So
is that because of some of the people that you know, the opportunities that you open up?
A little bit of both. Initially the show was a pretty small cast, and it was easy. You have everybody show up and they try out, and some make it and some don't. But
right.
As it got more popular and people started realizing that it was kind of a gateway into the UFC, they'd have tryouts that had 1,000 people show up. So it got to the point where, kind of who you knew or what gym you were from, put you a little further ahead in line. Some idiot with a purple mohawk nobody cares about, but somebody that actually trains with reputable people, and, we know he's from a good gym, so
right.
He's probably a little bit better. So it helped him a little bit, I think.
They're bound to find somebody that entertains highly, though.
Right.
I could think of a couple like Chris Lieben that really entertained, and back in the day, Melvin Gillard back in the early part,
right?
He was pretty entertaining. DeMarcus Johnson to me was one of the most entertaining, mostly because of his capable wisdom that came out of his mouth sometimes.
Yeah, he's actually a pretty quick-witted guy. He always has something funny to say.
Well, we've got a phone call, but we're not going to take it. Hey, so tell me a little bit about injuries, if you will. FalkTalk sprung from an injury. I broke my back January 27th of this year. And, in healing my back, I used an exercise that I created. It's just a lot like fast walking. Use a water bottle like an inertia stick. And it was a big part of me, I believe, getting to a point where I can train at your gym even. And after me explaining it to you, do you have any kind of insight or input on it?
Well, at the basic level, any kind of motion is good. And the healthier your back gets, the more aggressive you can be with that motion. Certainly, walking and moving your upper body in kind of a counter motion,
right?
Like a counterweight. You're getting, constant flexion, constant twisting of your spine, but not a severe amount. So it's going to give you, the ability to get a little bit of a stretch, get a little bit of a warm-up, get the blood flowing. So, it seems pretty obvious to me that it's going to help.
You're going to help me describe walking just by that description. I'm so glad we had it on tape. So, Jeremy, you helped quite a few people achieve. You just recently went, and that's why we couldn't make it last week, was it Washington?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that are training at your gym, Mitch,
yeah.
Ended up fighting. He's a really interesting guy, really eccentric. I'd love to have him on the show someday. Tell me what happened in that fight.
We had two action fights. Mitch won. He actually choked his opponent unconscious in about 3 minutes in the first round. And then Cammie, I don't know if you've met her, Cammie Adams, one of the women that trains with us. She fought as well, and she won a decision.
So
one short one, one long one.
So what's the next step for each of them, do you think?
Nothing really in the books. Cammie's just getting started, and so back to work, back to job, back to kids, and when another fight rolls down, we'll take it as it comes. Mitch always looking for another fight, always looking to climb the ladder.
So you're not quite my age, I can tell. I'm 43. So being back in the UFC, possibly in the future here, is something in the cards.
I don't know about getting back to the UFC. The talent level there is pretty high. I'm 41. I just turned 41 this year, so I'm still plenty healthy and plenty fit. But I've got a lot of things on my plate now, running the gym and training other guys. I don't know if I have the dedication to get back to that level of competition. But it's always hard because I still want to fight. I still train all the time with the guys in the gym, so I still want to compete. But that takes a lot of dedication, a lot of work to compete at that level. But I don't want to compete at a level that I feel like is below me. It's like a college athlete going back and picking on the kindergarten kids. It's not any fun. I want to compete with the people that I feel are at my level, but I don't know if I have the time, and the motivation to drive for that. So we'll see. We'll kind of take it as it comes. That's why it's I'm not really looking for a fight, but it's not really off the list completely.
Right. So some of these things that have happened in the past where Randy Couture got a fight late and Matt, one of those type of fights.
Sure. Yeah, that could happen.
Those are actually a great one to look forward to.
Right.
It took quite a ways to get to that point from age 19 to when you were actually on the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
During that journey, were there quite a few different shows that are no longer part of this industry? Or?
Oh yeah. When I first started fighting, the sport was just kind of taking off and it was exploding, and there were shows everywhere. I actually fought in the UFC fairly early in my career, but at the time the UFC didn't really have any exclusive contracts. So I would fight, in the UFC one weekend. It's like the biggest stage in the sport.
Right.
And then the next weekend I'm fighting in a rodeo arena in the middle of nowhere in front of 300 people.
Right.
So yeah, there was lots of shows. Everybody was popping up. Trying to capitalize on the new craze. Everybody was promoting shows. So yeah, there's a lot of shows I fought for that don't exist anymore.
Did you go to Pride?
Yeah, I fought in Pride twice.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Who did you fight there?
I fought Akira Shoji first, and then Gilbert Ivel second.
What was the weight?
They don't really have weight classes in Pride. I was about 200 pounds for both.
How big were they?
Shoji's about 200, and Ivel was maybe 225.
I remember those days. It was so basically you brought Jiu-Jitsu to them mostly.
Jiu-Jitsu's been around for a long time. I don't know if it's fair to say that I brought it anywhere, but obviously that's always been my strength. So
Right, but you confused them a little bit with it.
A little bit. I mean, Jiu-Jitsu's pretty big in Japan.
Hey, Henzo and all them, they came about during the time you were out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the lineage stems from Japan hundreds of years ago, and then it went to Brazil, and then it kind of came to the U.S., but
I'm learning. Thank you for that.
No problem.
So, we try to help people understand a little bit more about ourselves, because if we can work on ourselves, and they say that, most of what happens to you has to come within.
Sure.
Right? And so, do you get much opportunity to share, your spirituality views with people, and are you open to that?
I'm more than open, yeah. I'm not particularly spiritual, but I've always felt that your life is going to be most rewarded when basically when you're selfish. Do what makes you happy, but I also think that a lot of times helping other people and making other people's lives better is what makes you happy. So I mean, it's selfish because I want to do it because it's what I want, but what I want is to make other people better. So
Right.
not exactly selfish, but. And that's the thing. I mean, you can do all kinds of things. It's a whole philosophical debate about whether or not there actually is such a thing as a selfless act. But what makes me happy is seeing other people grow and teaching other people and improving other people's lives. So
That's a really good point. The selfless act.
Yeah.
There, I never thought about the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of scenario. Isn't
well,
it?
I mean, people will say that that you're doing something to help somebody else and you get nothing out of it. But I mean, if you take away all the other factors, you feel good about it. So is it truly selfless?
And you continue to do it for the feeling.
Right.
Well, I call that feeling, and there's so many different types of that feeling, a spiritgasm.
Sure.
And you really don't know which one it is. Sometimes you get that feeling which comes over you, and then you can compare it to the same feeling you get when your kid comes out at birth, right? It's a pride feeling.
Sure.
Is that right?
Sure.
And then there's a different feeling you get when possibly you're overwhelmed with strain and stress and pain, and then that strain and stress and pain goes away, and then you get this burst or good feeling.
Yeah.
They're all spiritgasms. How else do you explain them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do is just try to fill your life with as many enjoyable things as you can.
Right.
It's I'm 41, but I still feel like I'm basically a 10-year-old because I get to play all day. I train and so.
Right, all day.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that your gym's open most of the time.
Yeah.
But when you're there, are you training people or are you training as well?
A little of both. I mean, I'm training other guys. I'm training myself. But even when I'm not, I mean, I'm doing other things that I enjoy. I still play video games. I like reading. Just that's the thing. I think people get too infatuated with planning for tomorrow. And then you turn around and you're 70 and you plan for tomorrow, but you just wasted 70 years of your life because you were always planning for tomorrow.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy today.
Absolutely.
Of course, you have to plan for tomorrow. It would be, reckless and stupid not to, but there's got to be a balance.
You can put those into a calendar event, right? And then forget about it until you get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I really get excited when there's an opportunity to talk to somebody that's been on a professional circuit, been in the limelight, been next to people like Dana White, who have been part of building a big dynasty out there to help people like yourself climb. So I guess the question for me would be, do you see yourself, possibly getting on and being one of the coaches with them, Ultimate Fighter?
Maybe. They actually offered me a coaching spot on the first episode, first season.
I could see that.
And things didn't quite work out. There were some scheduling conflicts. But again, now the format of the show is that the coaches are generally going to fight each other in the UFC. So, like I said, I'm not really in the right position to be getting back into the UFC, so that's probably not real likely. But
I could see you and Tito Ortiz.
He's in Bellator now. I mean, it's possible. Let's say, you can never say no to anything, but.
But you've been friends in the past?
Right.
Nice, good. Well, I'm really grateful that you came on FalkTalk.
My pleasure.
I hope that in the future that when you do fight, we get you back on FalkTalk.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
You'll be back in the limelight there. So, I appreciate you coming, and
no problem.
Good to get to know you. Thanks.
Oh.